A 74-year-old retired teacher from Dallas walked up to the TSA checkpoint at DFW last March, handed over her driver's license, and was told she couldn't proceed. Not because of anything she did wrong, not because she was flagged. Her Texas driver's license had expired 8 months earlier, and under the real ID enforcement rules that kicked in May 2025, that little plastic card was no longer enough. She stood there, bags in hand, watching her gate close on the departures board. She never made that flight, and she's far from alone. Every single week in airports across the United States, travelers over 70 are getting stopped, delayed, questioned, and in some cases flat out denied boarding. Not because they broke any law, but because the rules shifted and nobody bothered to make sure they knew. Some of these changes happened quietly, others were announced, but buried in government websites that most people never visit. And the result is a growing wave of older Americans showing up at airports completely unprepared for what's waiting for them. That's exactly why this video exists. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to walk you through every rule change, every screening update, and every documentation requirement that affects travelers over 70 in 2026. More importantly, I'm going to give you the exact words to say when you hit a wall at the checkpoint or the gate. Because knowing your rights means nothing if you can't communicate them clearly at the moment. So here's where this starts. May 7th, 2025. That was the date the federal government began enforcing real ID requirements for domestic air travel. If your state-issued ID doesn't have a small gold or black star in the upper corner, TSA can refuse it at the checkpoint. Full stop. This had been delayed multiple times over the years, which created a false sense of security. A lot of people assumed it would get pushed back again. It didn't. Now here's why this hit seniors harder than any other group. According to data from the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, adults over 65 are the least likely age group to have upgraded to a real ID-compliant license. In some states, the renewal cycle is 8 years. If you last renewed at age 68 and you're now 76, your license might technically still be valid, but it might not be real ID compliant because the requirement didn't exist when you got it. You'd have no way of knowing unless someone told you or you specifically checked for that star. And the fix isn't always simple. Getting a real ID means going to the DMV in person. You need original documents, a birth certificate, proof of social security number, 2 pieces of mail showing your address. For someone who moved into assisted living 3 years ago, or whose birth certificate is in a safe deposit box across the country, that's not a quick errand, that's a project. If you find yourself at the airport without a real ID-compliant license, say this to the TSA officer. I understand my ID may not meet real ID standards. I'd like to request the alternative identity verification process. TSA does have a backup procedure. They can verify your identity through other means, asking security questions, checking databases, even accepting combinations of other documents like a passport card, voter registration, or a credit card with your photo. It's not guaranteed to work, but asking for that process by name puts you in a completely different position than just standing there confused. Now, this brings up something most people never think about. Millions of seniors hold driver's licenses they voluntarily gave up or let expire years ago because they stopped driving. Makes perfect sense. Why renew something you don't use? But that expired license used to be enough to get through airport security. Not anymore. As of 2025, an expired ID is not accepted at TSA checkpoints. Period. It doesn't matter if it expired last week or 5 years ago. The backup here is a valid US passport or a passport card. If you don't drive, but you fly even once a year, one of those 2 documents is now essential. A passport card costs around $65, fits in your wallet, and works for domestic flights. That's your safety net. There's a widespread belief floating around that once you turn 75, TSA basically waves you through security with no hassle. I hear this constantly, and I need to set the record straight. Yes, there are some accommodations for travelers 75 and older. You can keep your light jacket on. You can leave your shoes on. You might not need to remove your laptop from your bag. But, and this is a big, but these are screening courtesies, not security exemptions. You still need valid identification. You still go through the body scanner or metal detector. You can still be selected for additional screening. TSA PreCheck does help if you're enrolled, but PreCheck is a separate program with its own enrollment, fingerprinting, and renewal process. It's not automatic based on age. If your PreCheck membership expired and you didn't realize it, you're going through the standard line just like everyone else. The phrase that helps here, I'm over 75 and I'd like to confirm the modified screening procedures available to me. This signals to the officer that you know the accommodations exist without being confrontational. It also puts them in a position to walk you through the adjusted process calmly. If you have a hip replacement, a pacemaker, a knee implant, or any other internal medical device, the screening process in 2026 looks noticeably different than it did even 2 years ago. Advanced imaging technology, Those full-body scanners will detect your implant and flag it. Every time. That's normal. But what catches people off guard is the follow-up procedure. You may be asked to undergo a pat-down. You may need to wait for a same-gender officer. In busy airports, that wait alone can eat 20 to 30 minutes. Here's what to say before you even step into the scanner. I have a medical implant, and I'd like to request a pat-down instead of going through the scanner. You have the right to opt out of the scanner entirely. You also have the right to request that the pat-down happen in a private room if that makes you more comfortable. Carrying a doctor's note that describes your implant isn't required by TSA, but it speeds things up considerably and prevents unnecessary back and forth. While we're on medical topics, traveling with prescription medication seems straightforward until you're standing at a checkpoint and a TSA officer starts examining the 12 pill bottles in your carry-on. TSA doesn't technically require medications to be in their original pharmacy bottles. But here's what actually happens in practice. If an officer can't identify what a medication is, they can pull you aside for additional screening. That's not them being difficult. That's protocol. For anyone over 70 who travels with multiple prescriptions, and the average American over 65 takes 4 or more, here's the move. Keep everything in labeled pharmacy bottles. Carry a printed list from your doctor or pharmacist that shows your name, each medication, the dosage, and the prescribing physician. If you use a pill organizer, bring the original bottles too, even if they're empty. The labels are what matter. If you're carrying liquid medications over the standard 3.4 ounces, you need to declare them at the start of screening. Say, I have medically necessary liquids to declare. That phrase activates the exemption process and avoids having your medication confiscated. Nobody in the travel industry wants to talk about this openly, but confusion, hearing difficulty, and slower processing speed at security checkpoints cause thousands of seniors to face unnecessary complications every year. Airport security lines are loud, rushed, and full of barked instructions. If you have difficulty hearing, if you process instructions more slowly than you used to, or if the stress of travel makes it harder to think clearly, you are not alone, and you are not doing anything wrong. TSA officers are trained to assist travelers with disabilities and communication needs, but they can't help if they don't know. The phrase here is, I have a hearing difficulty, or I may need additional time to follow instructions. You can also request a passenger support specialist by calling TSA Cares at 855-787-227, at least 72 hours before your flight. That specialist will meet you at the checkpoint and guide you through the entire process. It's free. It exists specifically for situations like this. Almost nobody knows about it. Now here's the part you came for, the specific words, and requests that cut through bureaucracy and protect your right to fly. I've mentioned several already, but let me pull them together. That last one is critical. Airlines are required to provide written documentation if they deny you boarding. Having that in writing protects you for rebooking, refund claims, and formal complaints. Without it, it becomes your word against theirs. Say it calmly. Say it clearly. Don't argue the policy in the moment. Just get the documentation. Something else most families don't know. What happens when you need someone to walk you to the gate but they don't have a ticket? Airlines can issue gate passes to non-ticketed companions. This is not a universal right. It's at the airline's discretion, but most major carriers will issue one. If you explain the situation, and here's the key. You need to ask at the ticket counter before security, not at the gate after you've already struggled through alone. The phrase, I need a non-ticketed companion gate pass for medical or mobility assistance. Some airlines require the companion to go through full TSA screening. Others limit gate passes during peak hours, but the option exists, and it's underused. If you're helping a parent or grandparent travel, this one piece of knowledge can change the entire experience. Airlines are required by federal law, specifically the Air Carrier Access Act, to provide wheelchair assistance at no charge. You don't need to prove a disability, you don't need a doctor's note, you just need to request it. The reality, though, is that wheelchair assistance is often understaffed, especially at connecting airports. Passengers have reported waiting 45 minutes or more after landing for a wheelchair that was prearranged. Two things help. First, when you book the flight, call the airline directly and request wheelchair assistance for both departure and arrival. Don't just check a box online. Call and confirm it verbally. Second, if you land and no wheelchair appears within 15 minutes, ask any gate agent to radio the assistance coordinator. Don't sit and wait quietly. The system responds to direct requests, not patience. The standard advice of arriving 2 hours early for domestic flights isn't built for someone who moves through an airport at a different pace. If you're over 70, dealing with any of the issues we've discussed, medical devices, medications, mobility assistance, document questions, 2 hours might not be enough. I'd recommend 2.5 to 3 hours for domestic flights and 3.5 for international. That extra time isn't wasted, it's pressure relief. It means you're not rushing through security with a heart rate of 120. It means if you get pulled for additional screening, you still have a buffer. It means you can sit at your gate for 30 minutes and breathe before boarding. That mental cushion is worth more than you might think, especially if something unexpected comes up. Before you leave your house for any flight in 2026, here's the short stack of documents that acts like armor against every problem we've discussed. A real ID-compliant license or valid U.S. passport. Your TSA PreCheck known. Traveler number is written down, not just in your phone. A printed medication list from your doctor or pharmacy. A doctor's letter describing any implants or medical devices. Your boarding pass, printed, not just on your phone in case your battery dies. Travel insurance documentation if you carry it. And the airline's customer service phone number is saved in your phone and written on paper. That stack takes 5 minutes to assemble and covers nearly every scenario that could trip you up at the airport. It sounds like overkill until the moment it saves your flight. Here's what I want you to walk away knowing. Not a single one of these rules was designed to stop you from flying. They were designed for security. The problem is that the implementation doesn't account for how these rules land differently on older travelers. Expired IDs, complicated medication regimens, implants that trigger every scanner, hearing loss in a noisy terminal. These aren't rare edge cases. This is the daily reality for millions of Americans over 70. You have every right to fly. You have every right to assistance. And you now have the exact words to make sure those rights are respected. Write them down. Practice them. Share this video with someone in your family who might need it or who helps a parent or grandparent travel. If this information helped you feel more prepared, subscribe to this channel. I cover rule changes, airline updates, and travel strategies, specifically for travelers who are told the system wasn't built for them. It was. They just forgot to hand you the instructions. Now you have them.